Hey everybody, I know it's been a long time since I've posted on YouTube. I've been very busy developing a lot of stuff. Just thought I'd post up and show you what I've been doing last couple of days. I've rejigged the bathtub worm farms. One of them I'd taken out of the shed a couple of years ago to make way for something else and hadn't ever put it back together. So this weekend I've put the original one back together and also created a new one. So this is the new one that I'm showing you here that I've done. It's actually a brand new bathtub still with the plastic wrapping around it. It's obviously been damaged when the guys have unloaded it or something, because we can see here in the picture there's a big crack in the side of it. There's also a couple of chips around the outside, so it's had a hard life on the delivery side. But anyway, so I've found that somewhere, maybe sort of 5 to 7 years ago maybe, and had that laying around the yard, so I decided to do something with it. So my first stage was repairing the crack that was there, and so this is on the outside of the bathtub, and I just put some roof and gutter silicone in there. You might wonder, is that actually food safe? Well, that's the same silicone that we use here in Australia for guttering where you're collecting rainwater to drink. So it's considered quite safe to use, the silicone, roof and gutter silicone. And then I ran out of black tape, so you can see here I've actually used this fancy silver tape that I found in the shed. With everything from COVID being around, we're trying to stay home as much as possible, and luckily I only had to go out to buy one length of wood from a building supply yard that's right around the corner from me. But anyway, so that's the hole patched up and siliconed up. And then to build the frame for the bathtub, I've basically used some sleepers. These ones are the ACQ, I think it's called, treatment that supposedly all right around kids' playgrounds and food gardens. So that's a 200mm by 50mm sleeper, which should be, I think it's 8 inches by 2 inches for my American friends. So I do this quite a lot when I'm building stuff, as sleepers are one of the strongest, cheapest things I can buy, and when I split them in half it becomes quite price conscious using sleepers. So you basically flip the bathtub upside down like you saw it on the table there before, and make your framing fit around it. These long sides here I had to scallop out a little bit with the electric planer to make them fit in around the sides of the bathtub, because it was actually quite a tight sort of fit. The original bathtub I didn't have to do anything like that in. It just depends on the different bathtubs you might use. And so this, as you can see, the two bits of sleeper that are making the frame around the outside of the bathtub, and this is where the leg connects to it. And again, the legs are just halved sleepers, very strong. And I've got, again, I had to use the bolts that I had here available at home rather than drive down the hardware store. We're supposed to be isolating as much as possible here. So I used these very heavy duty screws that you use for all sorts of outdoor landscaping work. And so the ones in this side here are only like, I think they're 75mm, so they only go into the wood here by about sort of an inch. But the two here on this side are actually longer, slightly longer than the thickness of the whole bit of material through there. So suffice to say, they're not going anywhere in a hurry. And then I found with the bathtubs, if you don't put some sort of frame around the bottom of the legs, this is the frame with the bathtub removed and flipped upside down, if you can imagine this. So these are the legs here you can see sticking up into the air, and that's the frame that you just saw where the bathtub was in here. And so this is just a little mini frame that I put around the legs to help reinforce the legs. And if you wanted to, you could actually, like in one of my old bathtub builds, you can actually put a shelf in there if you want. I haven't wanted to put a shelf in there. I just use this wood here to reinforce what I'm doing there. So here's the ag pipe going in. So this is what we call ag pipe or slotted ag pipe here in Australia. So it'll be what you find in French drains or spoon drains or anywhere they put drainage around homes and businesses. This is just a 2-inch or 50 mil plastic pipe, and it's got slots cut in it all the way along it, sort of thing, so that water can leach into the slots and then drain away. And so I've just loosely fitted it here so I can make sure I've got enough material. Again, I was quite lucky to be able to find a couple of meters of that lying around that I hadn't used. And so I always try and make things rather than buy things. So these are some little saddles I've made with this sort of strapping stuff. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you'll see me using this strapping quite a lot. It's the stuff that they strap the top of shed frames with. It's a very handy bit of kit to have a roll of that lying around. So I basically cut 2 pieces of this to 170 millimeters. You guys in the US will have to look that up. It's like about 7 inches. And then I've bent it around the pipe and put the little fins into it there. And I think you can see, oh no, the next picture, you can see here I've cut the corners of that on a little bit of an angle so they don't sort of, if you don't cut those corners off, the edges of the material can stick up and make a little sharp point for you. So then I've just tech screwed those saddles into the bathtub. In the original bathtub I used a piece of aluminium expanded mesh to cover the drainage hole. This one I just used an offcut of some shade cloth to help cover. That's where the plug hole of the bathtub is, down in there. You can see the drainage pipe goes all the way up to the surface on both ends, so that helps get oxygen down into the bottom of the bedding. It also provides a space where I can jet the hose down into there and unblock anything that's blocking that up in there and help the bathtub drain properly. And the idea behind this drainage layer is if you don't have some sort of drainage layer in the bottom of a very long trough like this one here, the castings will sponge the water up rather than let water drain through it. So if you don't have a drainage layer like this, the castings will just get wet and gluggy and be awful to work with. This at least enables it to drain and also helps get oxygen into the bottom of the material. So sorry, back to there. That's just again, luckily I had a few buckets of this lying around. It's just 5mm drainage gravel. This one's called blue metal, which is material like they build roads with, sort of thing. It's just a very common drainage gravel that we have here. Wouldn't matter what size you use there. Whatever you've got lying around would do the job. And then over the gravel I put a piece of shade cloth, and that's just to stop the castings getting mixed into the gravel. So when we harvest the material out of here later, we know where the good stuff stops and the gravel starts. If you don't put something in here, you'll end up with all gravel in your castings or castings in your gravel, however you want to think about that. And you could use weed mat, you could use geotextile or geofabric like they use in landscaping. You could also use insect mesh if that's what you've got. Any of those sort of products would be fine to use. And then I always like making sure that as far as possible insects can't get into my larger worm farms, and also vermin like rats and mice. So this is just when I went down to the building, the recycled building materials yard, I had to buy 1 length of timber to make this frame around underneath here that you can see, and then this is just 2 window insect screens, and I've had to cut them down. They're very easy to cut down, these aluminium or aluminum screens. You just basically have to disassemble it, and it's just got a gadget in the corner here that's like an L sort of thing where the corners go together. So you just unhook that sort of thing and cut your new piece of material out with a 45-degree angle. and this is just two screens I had to join together because I couldn't get one that was exactly right. So the frame around the outside serves just to be able to put a lid on it, because you can see here this is where the headrest end of the bathtub is, and quite a lot of the bathtubs have big sort of headrests that come up out of the bathtub itself. So if you want to put a sort of a lid on, you've got to make a subframe to put the lid on to get the lid square on top of the tub. But anyway, so that's the situation there. This is just normal fiberglass insect screen that's in this, and I've turned it upside down. I've turned it so that the insect screen is on the bottom, and then there's a void between the insect screen and the top of the frame, because then the next stage for me is making sure rats and mice can't get into the food. And so I put a rat and vermin mesh on there. It can also be called Avery mesh. It's just the 1/4 inch or 6.5 millimeter mesh, like we quite often see in use around the place. Really good stuff to put on. So I've put that on, and then because even though this tub here is under the big shade house where the wedge systems are, it still gets rain in there. And so I didn't want excess, too much excess water getting in and making the castings all muddy and making the worms' lives hell. So I've put some repurposed, this is clear. Well, it's not actually clear because it's got a smoky tint to it, but it's like that plastic roof sheeting. This is stuff I've carted here from our previous house, so that's maybe about 6 or 7 years old now, but I always say it's not hoarding unless you keep it for more than 10 years and don't use it. So anyway, so I've put that on there to keep the rain out. And then this is the old unit, so the one you've probably seen in previous bathtub videos. It had the frame around the side of it here, but because I'd used some untreated wood in that frame originally and then stored the thing outside, the wood had broken down, so I stripped the old frame off of that. I was able to save the two long bits which made the leg reinforcers up on the bottom of this one. And so I just had to whack the, because this one previously had been kept in the shed, I just had to put the rat and vermin mesh on top and then the clear sheeting. And then this is what you can see, because this unit sits outside between the two hoop houses. It gets some sun on it in the middle of the day. So it's something you need to be really careful with is sun getting on your worm farm. So this is just a basic shade structure I've made up and screwed to the top of the unit to keep the sun off of it. You can see there from the end it's just basically 4 bits of wood screwed together to make a square frame, the same at the other end, and then just 2 bits of wood join the 2 end frames, and then we screw or staple the shade cloth onto the top. And I think that's probably about a 50% shade cloth, but I've actually doubled it over because I had enough left over from other projects to do that with. You can see here these are the old bits of framing that I've used underneath to reinforce the legs. But anyway, so that's a bathtub worm farm in the way I do it. Especially the drainage layer is something that we need to be looking at and being careful of. And the thing with worm farms is generally speaking, the larger the worm farm, the easier it is to look after. Yes, certainly the larger it is, the more you'll be able to feed it, and so you might take a bit longer taking care of it because it's a much larger worm farm, but it actually makes them almost bulletproof against overfeeding and mismanagement, especially when you pocket feed a bathtub. And that's how I teach to do the bathtub. So we'll pocket feed here, and then the next time we feed, we'll pocket feed there, and we'll pocket feed. So we'll pocket feed basically around the outside in a racetrack, and then by the time you get back to the start, the worms have fully eaten the food that's there, and then we just keep laying it round and round and round. Interestingly, the bathtubs are really easy to do a horizontal migration harvest out of. You can check my other videos on how to do that, and there's also a free guide on the website, harvesting worms at home. And then just to let you know what I'm doing, because it's been a while since I've posted on YouTube for everyone, I've just created virtual worm farming workshops. So this is the full workshop that I do for face-to-face clients. So I'm employed by the local city council as a worm farming trainer to the Master Composters program, the library system, and also educational kids activities. And then I do my own face-to-face workshops where I sell tickets, and also do workshops for third parties like North East Street City Farm. If you've ever heard of them, they're a large community garden type project in Brisbane. And so what this is the full 2.5 hour face-to-face workshop done as a recorded virtual workshop, because everything's been cancelled at the moment because of the COVID. So as you can see here, there's a free introductory video so you can get the feel of what it is how I'm doing the training and how it looks, sort of thing. There's a bit of information in there about different worm types and what the ones are that we want to culture. And then if you're still not sold on purchasing the whole, or renting I should say, it's a rental system, not a purchase system. If you're not sold on renting the whole 4 modules, you can just rent the first module again to have a bit of a look at it. But then if you want to rent the other 3 modules, you basically have to pay for the 4-pack anyway, and that's the discount basically you get if you rent the 4-pack straight away, is you don't have to pay for the first one by itself. You get the whole 4 videos. The way the Gumroad rental system works is after you purchase the product, you get 30 days to start streaming or watching the videos, and then once you start streaming the videos, you have 3 days to stream them as many times as you like to your devices. You can watch them with a friend, with your family, with your mother, with your father, with your son, with your daughter, whoever you want to watch them with. It doesn't matter. You can watch them as many times as you like over that 3 days. There's also written bonuses as well for students. Just the first module, there's a quick start guide to get people going straight away, and with the 4 module pack, there's the quick start guide and also the full student guide like I give to people in the face-to-face workshops. But anyway, so you can go and have a look at that if you want. Download the watch or stream the free introductory video if you want to see what it is that I'm doing, and that's the link you go to have a look at it. But anyway, so thanks very much, guys. I hope you're all keeping well and keeping busy, and we'll all get through this, I'm sure. Thanks very much for watching.